You're crouching in tall grass somewhere on the African savanna, maybe 80,000 years ago. The wind shifts direction, and a shadow moves through the trees at the edge of the clearing. It's probably nothing. But your chest tightens anyway. You don't just see a shadow, like you feel something watching you. Here's the strange part. That feeling, that invisible watcher, never went away. It followed your species into caves, temples, cathedrals, and courtrooms. Why did the human brain start believing something was always there? To understand gods, you have to understand a much older problem, the problem of predators. For millions of years, your ancestors were prey, not apex predators, not kings of the food chain. Lunch. And lunch needs to be paranoid. The ones who assumed the rustling bush was dangerous survived. The ones who shrugged it off became a leopard's dinner. So natural selection carved a bias into your ancestors' brains. When in doubt, assume something is there. Assume it has intentions. Assume those intentions are aimed at you. Scientists call this hyperactive agency detection. Your brain doesn't just detect agents, like it over-detects them. Like it sees minds behind mindless events. Today you experience this every time a coat on a door hook startles you at midnight. Your heart rate spikes before your rational mind catches up. That delay, the gap between panic and reason, is where gods were born. But paranoia alone doesn't build a religion. Something else had to happen first. Your ancestors had to develop a second ability, one that changed everything. They had to learn to read minds. Not literally, of course, but functionally, they had to imagine what another being was thinking and feeling. Psychologists call this theory of mind. It's the reason you can guess why your friend is angry before they say a word. It's also the reason you can imagine a mind where no body exists. Here's where the two systems collide. Agency detection says, something is out there. Theory of mind says, and it has thoughts, desires, and a plan. Put those together and you don't just hear thunder. You hear someone angry. You don't just notice the river flooding. You sense something punishing your tribe. And this is critical. The brain doesn't flag this as a guess. It flags it as a perception. It feels as real as seeing a lion. Your prefrontal cortex, the skeptical editor, is a recent addition. For most of human history, it barely had a say. The emotional brain ran the show, and it ran it on pattern recognition. Pattern recognition is brilliant for spotting real threats, but it has a massive flaw. It finds patterns even where none exist, faces in clouds, messages in coincidences, meaning in random tragedy. Cognitive scientists call this apophenia, the tendency to see signal in noise. And here's the fact that recontextualizes everything. The brain would rather be wrong 1,000 times than miss one real threat. False positives cost you a little energy. False negatives cost you your life. So the system is deliberately miscalibrated toward believing. Belief isn't a bug, it's the feature that kept you alive. But there was a social accelerant that made everything more intense. Language. Once humans could talk, the invisible agent got a name. It got a story, a personality, preferences. Now, the rustling bush wasn't just something to flee from, it was something to negotiate with. Now, fast forward to this morning, you wake up in a world with weather satellites, antibiotics, and door locks. You face almost zero predator threats, and yet you still feel watched when you're alone in a dark parking garage. You still whisper a private bargain when someone you love is in surgery. You still knock on wood. These aren't conscious choices. They're reflexes from a brain still running ancient software. The agency detection hasn't dimmed. It just found new targets. Conspiracy theories activate the same circuitry as ancient spirit beliefs. Both say, someone invisible is behind this, and they have a plan. Superstitions follow the same logic. Your lucky shirt didn't win the game, but your brain linked two events and called it causation. That's apophenia again. Pattern recognition doing overtime with no predator to justify it. Even self-described atheists aren't immune. Studies show that nearly everyone, regardless of stated belief, behaves differently when they feel observed. Put a poster of eyes on a wall, and people cheat less on tests, not real eyes. A picture of eyes. The Watcher doesn't need to be real, it just needs to feel real. And there's a deeper paradox buried in all of this. The belief in watchful gods may have actually helped early societies cooperate. If you think a powerful being will punish cheaters, you're less likely to cheat. Groups with shared supernatural beliefs outcompeted groups without them. Religion became a social technology, a coordination tool built on a cognitive accident. The accident worked so well that it shaped civilizations. So here's what we're left with. You carry a brain that was sculpted by millions of years of mortal terror, a brain that would rather invent a mind in the darkness than face the darkness alone. That's not weakness. That's an engineering choice made under impossible pressure. When you couldn't predict the flood, you invented someone who could. When your child died and you couldn't understand why, you needed a reason to keep walking. Gods gave you that reason. They were the brain's answer to the most unbearable feature of consciousness, not death itself. But knowing it's coming, every other animal runs from a predator in the moment. You're the only one that lies awake at 3 a.m. knowing you will die someday. That knowledge needed a container, something big enough to hold it, and the brain, desperate and brilliant, built one. It built a watcher, a judge, a parent who never leaves. You can call it God. You can call it a cognitive bias. You can call it both, but you can't call it surprising, because an animal that knows it will die was always going to invent something that doesn't. Your ancestors lit a fire and imagined someone was watching. You still feel the warmth.